Go. Welcome everyone to Evolve Masterclass. Tonight we're doing a really fun topic on mastering resilience. And I think it just goes perfectly following confidence because I think we get more and more confident the more we get knocked down in life. So as a lot of us know, this life can be challenging. It hands us all sorts of opportunities to evolve quite regularly. This is why I have the unilome as part of our logo. It talks about the path, right? Sometimes you're going up and sometimes you're coming down. Sometimes you feel like you've really gotten someplace and then it feels like you've fallen back again. So the unilome is this beautiful symbol of our journey here on Earth. And you can think about it in a way that works for you. But I'm going to speak tonight about all the opportunities. We could call them problems, but we're going to call them opportunities that we have in this life that helps us build resilience. I think of resilience in many ways as both the rise and the fall. But today we're going to talk a little bit more about the rise, hence why the phoenix was rising out of the ashes and the flames. I believe it's about evolving with every setback. And every time becoming a little bit wiser, a little bit stronger, definitely more self-aware, and going a little bit further. So for a lot of us who like to think of it poetically, it's the breakdown to the breakthrough. I define resilience for myself as the capacity to maintain my core purpose and integrity in the face of any challenge and any circumstance. So for me, resilience is the ability to overcome setbacks and move forward. Anyone hear the term resilience is bouncing back? Well, I think it's bouncing forward, right? You do sometimes bounce back, it's like the arrow, but then you bounce forward and you get a little bit further each time. So I'm going to share a story, or many stories if I can get to them. We'll see how much time I have. I'll put the rest in the bonus lecture. We're going to do practical tools. We'll do a little bit of science and some habits that can expand our life and help us master resilience. Before we officially begin, let's just make some space. If you're willing, take a nice deep breath and pull it all the way into the belly. And then on the exhale, we can make that ah sound. Ah. I know you guys want to do that again. Inhale, deep breath all the way into the belly, and ah. We're breathing in like we're claiming some new life here. Clearing the heavy air. We're going to make some space. One more, and then we'll move on. Inhale. Ah. Feel the power? So when we decide with our breath to come into the here and now, we're actually building resilience because we have space to act, to take that massive action if we feel it, and to have some room for some purpose. So I'm going to tell a story, and this is going to be my story. It's a very real story about my medical school journey, and many of you have not heard this story in full. So while I'm a doctor, physician today, med school graduate, the road here was not smooth. I started pre-med at Muhlenberg College, and I was just full of ambition until I failed my first biology exam. I called my dad, and his response was, well, medicine is not for everyone. So I dropped pre-med. And then I got a D like dad, in calculus. And it stood out really nicely in all of my A's and just a sprinkling of B's. No C's, just this big old D and not the good kind. So I walked away from medicine for a while. But something in me hadn't walked away from this healing profession. While working in Pfizer after college, I actually went back and started taking these post-bac pre-med classes. And I did all right, getting my A's until organic chemistry. I failed my first exam. I cried for 2 hours. And once again, my dad said, well, medicine isn't for everyone. At the next class, I found out that everyone in the class had also failed the exam. And the F, actually, that I got was turned into an A. second highest grade in the class. Interesting. So I kept going. And I got A's in the rest of my classes. But then there was the MCAT. Oh, that big old test you need for most med schools. It was not my friend. I took a prep course and then I took the exam. I didn't do well. So I took another prep course and I didn't do well again. Third time's a charm, right? Not for me. Each time, it just knocked my confidence a little bit further down, even though my score would go up a little tiny bit. I overthought every single question. I have the mind of a psychiatrist, a life coach. I'm living in nuance here. So just to pick one right answer, come on. But I kept going. Eventually, I was accepted into medical school that looked at the whole me, not just the score. And once I arrived, guess what happened? I failed all my first exams, some second ones too. I got a letter from the dean suggesting I reconsider my path, maybe drop a class, maybe repeat the term. And my dad said, well, medicine isn't for everyone. But I just decided to keep going. And somehow that last exam, I really pulled it together in all my classes, and I did so well that I passed the term. And then my second year, I fractured my dominant wrist teaching yoga. I couldn't even fill the bubbles in on the Scantron. They had to assign me a teacher's aide just to take the exams. And I had this belief, the story in my head was, I need to write things down to learn them. I have to write them over and over and over again. But now, with my hand out of commission, I had no choice but to speak things out loud. And suddenly, my retention soared. I was able to remember more than I ever had. So it turned out the story that I had about the how I learn, it wasn't true. And that fracture gave me a breakthrough. I made it through the academic years, and then I took the step one and I passed. And I thought, okay, I'm headed to OB-GYN, right? I'm going to deliver some babies. This is going to be great. Until I met many of the OB-GYN residents who decided that hazing and harassing students was really fun. And they did it to a point where I thought, you know what? I just don't think I can be in a field where people treat other people like this. And I didn't really love the lack of sleep. I felt really lost. I was uncertain where I was supposed to go. They were moving me through different rotations. It was pediatrics, internal medicine. You get the idea. And just when I was very close to giving up during my last year of rotations, I became pregnant. And as if I wasn't uncomfortable enough, I had all day morning sickness for 9 months straight. I would drive to work thrown up in a grocery bag while driving. I had to change of clothes in the back just in case, second set of scrubs, right up until the day I gave birth. In fact, right on the hospital sidewalk. Anywho, I gave birth naturally. That was fun. A resilience story for another day. And last but not least, I had my psychiatry rotation. And I had that settle in feeling like I had just come home. So despite my less than stellar scores, board scores, and what have you, I actually bonded with the program director over something really simple. Yoga. Turns out she did yoga too. And she saw my work ethic and she gave me a chance and accepted me into the residency program. I learned what true sleep deprivation looks like, coming home after a 36-hour call. If you don't know, in psychiatry, you have to do 4 months of medicine, pumping people's heart, working in the ER and on the medicine floor. And I would come home, 36 hours, no sleep, and handed a newborn. While all my friends were sleeping, I had to take care of a very wide awake baby. I was a hardcore mom and a doctor, but somehow I still passed step 2 anyway. And then I was made chief resident. I moonlighted at night during my last year of residency to a Ford's apartment. I woke up early, I fed my son, I drove him to preschool, I worked a full shift, and then I moonlit at night and I studied when I could because we had another board. If you don't know much about medicine, there's lots of board exams. And still, I graduated residency. I passed the psychiatry board exam with flying colors. And now here I am. Now, that was not the end of my challenges, as many of you have heard some stories that have come after. And maybe to you, this sounded like a list of obstacles. To me, this was a living example of resilience. Resilience where you make an active choice to begin again and again and again, even when the outcome doesn't look so bright. And this is where life invites us to evolve, even when it feels like we might have just hit a dead end. So resilience is more than rising, it's rising forward. I think of the phoenix, right? Because we think about the phoenix being born again, it's rising from the flames, but it's also flying through the flames. We can't forget about that. It's going through some really hard things to soar. I didn't make it here because everything worked out. I made it here because I kept going even when things didn't work out. And if you've lived through some hard times yourself, you know we're all being asked a very specific question constantly, even if it's not the exact words. And that question is, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? Even when it's hard, even when you fall, even when you feel like you're dying. Life gives us these circumstances to grow our resilience muscle. And so we can learn what it takes to evolve and rise through all of it. So tonight we are going to understand that resilience is a muscle that grows through use. It's the inner agreement that we're making with ourself to take whatever trials we face and turn them into accomplishments. We reward the effort and we have compassion for the stop and the go. We lean in. In fact, resilience in our emotional life looks like leaning in. When we feel some pretty heavy stuff, right? It's not running away from it, it's being with it. Doesn't mean 24/7. We want to take breaks sometimes. It's allowing ourselves to feel those feelings. And emotionally strong people do that. People who can emotionally regulate are not afraid to face hard emotions. The ones that actually have experience facing difficult emotions are more emotionally resilient because they know what it's like to sit with the suffering. We're going to honor feelings, and then we'll eventually turn them into disciplined actions. There's so many wonderful studies. I'm going to reference a few Harvard studies tonight, the ones that actually do cool stuff on the developing child. I think those years of research are pretty amazing when it comes to resilience. And we're going to talk about supportive relationships and adaptive skills and even a meaningful sense of purpose. So, why do some people seem to bounce back easily while others struggle a lot more? There was a study in Hawaii and they followed 700 children from birth to middle age. And a lot of them grew up with poverty or family conflicts or health issues. But even with those challenges, about 1/3 became confident, caring, capable adults. What made the difference? Two main things. First, each had at least one supportive person who believed in them and gave them steady encouragement. Second, they believed their choices mattered and that they could shape their own future. So strong connections and the belief that you have power over your own path. Don't you just love that? I love these studies. It's so good. Then Ann Masson, which is one of the leading scholars in developmental resilience, her research, she explains that resilience grows out of everyday things that work well. So, what are those consistent things? Families, schools, communities that are giving steady care. And when kids get to practice skills and when their efforts are encouraged, all that resiliency starts to take root. So she found consistent support. So this could look like a teacher paying attention to a student in class, a coach offering encouragement, a parent listening rather than criticizing can make all the difference. So, moral of the story, ordinary care repeated over time builds resilience. Now, if you came into class thinking like, I don't have the genetics for resilience, I'm going to encourage you a little bit that while, some could come from biology, they're finding in all of these studies that most of our resilience actually comes from our choices, our practices, and our environment, which we have the power to change once we can get behind a wheel or learn how to take a bus or earn money. So every one of us has the power to build our resilience muscle. Pretty good news. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to practice how to handle our emotions. We're going to build strong relationships, which is why Evolve Masterclass is so freaking awesome, right? Because we have a place where we actually know how to support each other, hold space for each other, be empowering for one another. And we're going to also find meaning in our challenges. So here's what I hear when I read these things is that resilience is for everyone. We can all grow it every day and we can strengthen it with support and make it part of who we are. We can build. So, good news that we are so capable as human beings, we can survive really hard times and we can actually grow through them. Has anybody ever heard the term post-traumatic growth? Anyone post-traumatic growth? So here we're all learning. I love this. So post-traumatic growth means that after a really big challenge, maybe an illness, a loss, disasters, or trauma, people can come out with positive changes. The research shows that when people take time to reflect and find meaning in what happened, choose new directions, they can actually discover more appreciation for their lives, have more gratitude, even for the small moments, and for, of course, the closer and real relationships, not to mention the goals that match their true values. This is pretty cool. We talk a little bit about hedonic adaptation in some of our classes where we can adapt to things. And this takes it to a new level because it really shows we're freaking awesome, to say it simply. There is also something called the post-traumatic growth inventory. And this is a tool that actually measures the positive changes that people can experience after they go through a struggle. And so going through hard times alone is not necessarily going to lead to growth. It happens only when people really reflect on their experience, find purpose, and then create meaning from it. This is why two people can go through the same exact challenge, yet have very different outcomes. One can feel drained and hurt, while the other comes to Evolve Masterclass and talks about their trauma in evolving connections, and someone's like, wow, well, what's coming up for you? How do you feel about that? And now they're processing. I'm sure you can do it with your coach or therapist too, but just as an example. And now they're able to come to a different place. They can reframe, they feel, they process, they reframe, right? And then they might even be able to say, you know what, I think that happened to me so that I can help more people going through something similar. The difference comes from the story they tell themselves, the support they receive, the choices they make, and how they're going to see the challenge and move forward with the challenge. Isn't this amazing? We can reflect. We can say, what did I learn? What new path does this open? And I'll give you guys some fun questions and tool sheets. I always throw them in the course site so you can really play with this later. Purpose can keep that evolving happening. It keeps us moving forward. So, what else can we do? All right, let's look at something we can practice. So, here's a little tool. We're going to look at 4 things: the body, the focus, the meaning, and the relationships. So, the body, how we breathe. Are we practicing breathing regularly so that we're ready for it? I used to hand people a 4-count breathing sheet in my practice, and I would say, this will work better than a Xanax, but you have to practice it for 40 days straight. That's the only way this is going to work. And you're not allowed to practice it when you're freaking out, stressed out, or having a panic attack. You're only allowed to practice it when you're calm. And if you do it for 40 days, your body's going to learn this conditioned response. And you'll be in that grocery store or out in a social setting and you feel the panic coming on, but now it's the 45th day mark. And you're going to just quietly to yourself do your inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and your body, it's going to be like that. Xanax takes 20 minutes to work. A conditioned breathing response takes seconds. We can do this for ourselves. We can eat foods like, for instance, if we have things with yellow dye, the study shows a connection to anxiety. So in red dye, we can't focus, we can't concentrate, we're jittery, maybe also anxiety. So maybe we decide we're going to avoid things that can make us a little bit jittery and anxious. Build that resilience. Focus. How about when we pay attention to figure out, oh, that triggered me. We have a whole module on triggers. We start to learn, oh, I think that's something inside that's waiting to be healed. I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to get curious about that. I'm going to look at maybe areas where I have built resilience in the past. I'm going to take my focus to places that are going to help me here. The meaning, the way that I'm going to explain the experience that just happened to me, because that's going to fuel my energy that I take with me on my forward journey. And of course, the relationships. Who's supporting me? Who's maybe guiding me? Who helps me stay a little bit more steady under pressure? And when we add those 4 things together, we're building the resiliency muscle. All right, take a moment and just share this question out loud. Think of a time when things felt hard, but you kept going. It could be something small, something big. Just picture it clearly for a moment. Now, lean in. What did your body feel like? How was your breathing at the time? Maybe remembering any words that you said to yourself in that moment. Now gently take your hands and tap your thighs. And you're going to do just one beat with one hand and then the second beat with the other hand. You're going to do it at different times. And just gently tap your thighs and see if you can pull yourself away from that moment and then simply say, I am safe now. I am safe now. I've gotten through hard things. And I am evolving every day. Then take a deep breath and let it out. And if you want, you can press your hands together and maybe even just say the words, now I rise. Beautiful. Maybe that worked for you. Maybe it didn't. There's actually major science behind what I just did. So this is like EMDR. When you tap asynchronous, you're actually causing a rewiring in your brain and you can heal your trauma. This is the part where I have to say, don't try this at home without a professional, but like you can totally do these things. I love the hug one too. You can tap across your chest. That's one of my faves. You've heard of the tapping, but the science is really amazing here. And so you can help build your resiliency with doing things like this, okay? And if the rise feels cheesy, just don't do it. Okay. Here's another tool. There are 4 pillars in building resilience, according to some leaders. And in fact, many leaders, athletes, and high performers do these on a daily basis, okay? So we did a little bit about the physiology. We talked about some breathing, we could do some EMDR, but I'm going to talk about something even more fun and simple. Neuroscience shows that our posture can send signals to the brain that shifts the chemistry in real time. So let's all do the Superwoman, Superman pose for a second. Chest out, arms on the hips. Here we go. That's awesome. We're literally sending signals to the brain right now. We're shifting our chemistry and we're feeling more empowered and we're building our resilience. So that's really cool. And it works, right? We have the studies and the science to back it. But here's the thing, guess what else works in the way we don't want it to? Anyone leaning forward a lot during the day? Anyone slumping? Yeah, I do it too sometimes because we're human and we're going to love that about ourselves. And when we're ready, evolve it. But when we remember and when we catch ourselves, then we're going to stand tall and we're going to open our chest and we're going to breathe deeply. And our brain is going to help us move forward in action. Pretty cool. I'm telling you guys, CEO, people, world-class athletes, military leaders, they actually use rituals like this. They'll jump in the ice baths, they'll run the miles, they'll meditate. They understand that the body primes the mind. So if we can think about our physiology as like our switchboard, okay, we're just going to flip the switch and then the strength follows. All right, so physiology number 1. Number 2, focus. So your life expands in the direction of your attention. In yoga, energy flows where attention goes for my yogis. Yeah, energy flows where attention goes. So if you feed the problem, it multiplies, right? We heard the wolf story a few weeks ago or last week, but if we feed the possibility, possibility multiplies. And my sister, who couldn't be here tonight, we played the possibility game earlier today on the phone, and we were talking about all the ways something could work out that we were both trying to figure out. And I said, it doesn't matter whether this exact thing happens, it's that we're now willing to receive ways of thinking about this that we weren't before when we were closed off. So our focus becomes a steering wheel for resilience. Now, here's how you can put this into practice later tonight or tomorrow morning. You're going to write down, if you'd like, 3 wins from the last 24 hours or the last week, whatever feels comfortable. 3 wins. They don't have to be gigantic or monumental. Okay, there's your clause. Maybe you just finished a work project, or you were empowering for a friend, you held safe space, or you kept a promise to yourself. We're not focusing on the stuff we didn't do, we're focusing on our wins. Okay, when we build evidence, it's going to help our confidence that we learned last week, and then we're going to expand that into action. If you're a word person, I love words, pick a word for the next 30 days. Maybe it's serve, maybe it's courage, maybe it's create, empower, discipline. Whatever word gets you going, let it be, that focal point for you. And you can put it on a little post-it note, jot it down, put it on your wall, your mirror, your bathroom when you're brushing your teeth, and then return to the word when you need to. Another research article says that if we focus on our strengths, this one is Harvard Business Review, we focus on our strengths and having a sense of purpose, we can actually rewire our brain. So we can train to think in more optimistic ways. So this would be like seeing our setbacks as temporary instead of permanent. In life coaching, we're constantly saying the reframe. So instead of why is this happening to me, what is this here to teach me? Or what version of me is being invited to rise? Guiding our attention, allowing ourselves to be a little bit more creating, giving us a little bit more room to focus in places that are more empowering. Number 3, meaning. So what is the meaning that I'm giving whatever's happening? So if I just had a breakup, what's the meaning? What's the story that I'm telling? So if you have a challenge right now, maybe ask yourself, what is the gift in this moment? What can I learn? How can I grow from this? Maybe you take it to a place where you write down two lessons or growth experiences and one bold action step. And that's transforming the struggle into our training. Meaning fuels motivation. I saw that on an Instagram post at some point. So meaning fuels motivation. If that speaks to you, feel free to write it down. It allows us to connect to something bigger than ourselves. I always think of leaders who endured these immense trials, like Mandela, Malala, Viktor Frankl. You get the idea, right? They drew strength because they gave their experiences meaning. And we have the power to transform our own stories. We can do it in real time. We can do the past, whatever will help move us forward. And last on this one is our relationships. We're hearing the same stuff over and over again because guess what? This is what the studies show. So resilience grows through connection. Who's in my life right now? What are the qualities that allow me to feel safe, supported, empowered, seen, heard, understood? And maybe I don't feel like I have someone, and I'm going to make sure that I still write those qualities that I'm looking for because I can only call it in if I'm clear. I have to be aware of what I'm looking for. And then if someone does this for you, I talk about contributions. We could be a contribution for 5 minutes on a park bench with a stranger. If someone made you feel seen, even for a few moments, that counts. We're going to write it down. We're going to be that frequency. We're going to call in. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, just write it down. For those who love energy and speak energy, we got to call it in. We got to thank the universe in advance for the things we're looking for. If you have someone, I challenge you, this is really how we build the muscles, to send them a thank you text this week. Just thanks for being in my life. Hey, I was thinking about you. I just want to say thanks. The last time we spoke, you made me feel so understood. Just grateful for you and wanted you to know. Okay, gratitude makes those bonds even stronger. Who doesn't want to get a text like that? I love texts like that. It just feels good. Stay close to people who believe in your potential, who care about you, who allow you to stay strong and feel resilient. Keep supporting one another. Build your network. Okay, so physiology, focus, meaning, and relationships. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole this morning because there was just so many stories of these people losing a shoe or tripping and falling over or needing to tie a shoelace, and they still won the race. Here they were last, so behind, and they still made it through. And to me, this is just such an amazing example of resilience. I love it so much. Just remember that even when all hope seems lost, there's always a chance, there's always a way. And so we want to build that resilience muscle so that we have that belief system. One more marathon story. Catherine Switzer, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about her. This is the 1967 Boston Marathon, and women were not allowed to run the Boston Marathon. It was men only, okay? But she believed she had a right to be there. And so she signed up with her initials, KV Switzer. So first name wasn't there, so no one could guess she was a woman. And on race day, she started strong, right? She's a few miles in, and someone like figured out that she was a she. And this guy lost his temper. He ran into the course. He tried to tear off the bib, tear it off her shirt, and then someone started shoving her. It wasn't anyone in the race. It was the members outside the race. And they're yelling for her to get off. They're physically shoving her to get off. But she just kept running. She didn't stop. And guess what happened? She finished. She finished well before many of the men in the race. And that's when they realized that women can do this and women belonged in marathons, and the race changed history. So she and her resilience changed history. Moral of the story. We want to make sure that nobody shoves us off our path, not even ourselves. We want to finish whatever road or race we've decided to be on. If we want it, if we desire it. This is the goal of tonight's class, to remember that we can definitely build this muscle. We can be the parent we didn't have. If you feel like you didn't have someone that believed in you, then you believe in you now. You manage your emotions. You build stronger social skills. This is the work. This is the gift we have as adults. You maybe create a morning routine, a weekly reflection, an accountability partner. You can get one of those. Lots of people in this Evolving Connections will help you, and this membership will help you. We do it all the time. We send posts to each other, right? Hey guys, Orange Theory Fitness class, I'm going. Hold me accountable. So if you want it, we have it. Now, what about when life delivers disruption? What about when there are those challenges? If we're practicing, we're going to be okay. If I have rituals every day, or I aim for them every day and I get to them the majority of the time, when I repeat these small acts, like maybe I start the day by setting an intention, or I take a few deep breaths, or I picture how I want the day to go. We call this priming. P like pop, R-I-M like Mary, I-N like Nancy, G, priming. This is a great tool. So how would you like to prime your day? You can name 3 things you're grateful for, maybe 3 priorities for the day. We're just going to get our brain ready to focus on what matters to us for the day. How about micro? I emphasize the micro commitments, where we choose a small action for that day. Maybe you want to finish just a small task, or you want to speak up when you normally hold back. I have some students in my practice and they're like, I'm going to raise my hand today in class. I have a graduate student. She's like, I just can't do it. I'm like, you can do it. And so we said one little goal where she's going to raise her hand. She's just going to say something. All right. You can do this for yourself because these small actions add up over time and they build your confidence. Maybe you do a weekly reflection where you pause and you look back, maybe a Sunday or a Friday, and you write down your wins, the lessons you've learned, and then maybe just one focal point for the week ahead. This keeps you sort of active in your own experiences. Maybe you do a relationship checkpoint for yourself, your relationship goals, where you connect with 2 people who lift up your energy every month. See, we could do these rituals. They're simple, short, not so bad. Yeah, fair. Okay. And we know the fear is going to pop up. That's part of being human. We get really strong and resilient when we allow ourselves to accept emotions, because we're all going to have them. We're all going to feel scared. We're all going to feel sad. We're all going to feel angry. And so maybe we just bring some curiosity to it. We can even say, okay, I'm scared right now. What would courage look like here? I'm going to face doubt because everybody faces doubt. What step can I take to move forward? Get the idea? Yep. Okay, how does purpose fit into all of this? I can't not talk about purpose when it comes to resilience because the studies show it's so important. So purpose gives us that staying power. And if I didn't have that purpose when I was going through the medical school journey that I shared earlier, there was just no way. That purpose of, I believe I'm here to heal, to impact people, to empower people. I don't exactly know how, but I really believe I'm supposed to be here. I believe this is my purpose. And somehow that got me through. So what is your purpose? What's connecting you? What contribution makes your life feel meaningful? If you had to dedicate the next 5 years to a cause, what would it be? What's one small step that you could take to create a bigger tomorrow? So a step you could take today, bigger tomorrow. Getting the idea now. And so who can we have to support us on this journey? Because now we've learned how important relationships are. Mentors, coaches, community, people to celebrate with us or to help carry the load when it feels a little heavy. We know a student who has a teacher who believes in them is going to be one of the most powerful things. An athlete with a coach who pushes them to learn discipline, a professor. You guys, I'm sure we've all had one person, just one person in our life that felt like They believed in us. Yeah. So we want to keep creating that in our lives. So we have some really fun tools. I will share what happens when we exercise at another time. And we're going to see if there's anything else that is worth sharing tonight. Otherwise, I'm going to put everything in my bonus lecture. Adaptability. So, with athletes, they understand how important being adaptable is. They'll have the swim team train with those like foggy goggles just so that they know what it's like to deal with unexpected circumstances. Or a basketball team will have weighted vests so the real game feels a little bit lighter. They even do, for football players, they have the crowd noise. They'll play it so that the team learns how to stay calm, even if there's all that pressure. Or pilots will have these simulators where there's like these crazy storms happening or engine shutdowns, just so that they're going to build that adaptability muscle to maintain and rehearse for resilience. So we can do that too, or just lean into more circumstances that'll make us a little uncomfortable. In the confidence bonus I talked about, that what we can do to make ourselves uncomfortable, ask for things that we know we're not going to get. If you walk into a Subway and ask for a donut, it's a sub store. They're probably not going to have but do it anyway, just to get comfortable with this weird stuff. It's a whole training that we do to help people get through those weird sticky points, but it also builds resilience muscle. There's some research on the vagus nerve that shows you guys, we have a vagus nerve, goes deep, it goes all the way to the diaphragm. But basically, we have learned that we can train ourselves through our vagus nerve to easily shift from fight or flight to rest and digest. So that's your stress response to your relaxed response. And that can look like the breath work, the yoga, mindful movement, daily stillness, just the pausing and the breathing. So playing with that and saying, you know what, maybe if I add 2 minutes of breath work every day, I can learn to reset quickly. I can have that quick recovery. This is what we're looking for. How about, has anybody ever heard of how Thomas Edison found 10,000 ways that the light bulb did not work first before he found the way that it did? How about J.K. Rowling before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon? 100 rejection letters, I believe. I could be getting that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was 100. Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school basketball team. So what happened with these people? Well, for Michael Jordan, instead of letting that cut define him, he decided he was going to fuel himself with endless hours of practice. And he wasn't going to let the setback write his story. So instead of why me, right, how can I use this to grow, to evolve? How can I become more flexible? We think we have to be tough like stone, but it's the absolute opposite. We have to be willing to move, right? To deal with change, to adjust, to find new paths if one closes. Staying open to new ideas, open to outcomes, directions, and be so flexible. I think some of you have heard the story of the trees. I will end with this, and then I'll take some questions. There was a wide open field with two trees, and one was named Oakley, tall and proud, a trunk that felt like stone. And the other was Willow, very slender, very graceful. Her branches were just always moving with the breeze. And for years, Oakley would tease Willow. Stand tall, he said. Just stop swaying, stop bending. Strength means staying still. And Willow only smiled and let the wind run through her leaves. But one summer, skies darkened, a storm rolled in, fierce. The winds howled, the rain poured, and the ground shook. Oakley locked himself against the storm. He was determined not to move at all. But the harder he resisted, the more the wind pressed. His branches cracked, his trunk splintered, and with one final gust, Oakley snapped and crashed to the ground. Beside him, Willow bent low. She swayed with the storm, bending her leaves and allowing them to brush the soaked earth. The wind didn't break her. She gave it lots of space to pass through. And when the skies cleared, she stood tall, her roots still deep, her branches open to the sun. So resilience is not about being unshakable, to use a word from last week. It's just the willingness to bend when life storms blow hard and keeping the strength to rise tall again when the sky is clear. So let every fall teach you, and let every setback allow you to rise. The world is going to ask a lot of all of us, but it's also going to give us a lot back. I invite all of you tonight to choose to rise again and again. Keep practicing, keep learning, keep giving, and step forward, bounce forward with courage. Transform and, of course, evolve. Thank you all so, so much, and I will stay for questions. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. Namaste.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
This was so wonderful.